everyone, welcome to my first ever knitting podcast episode. My name is Evgenia, I live in Spain, Tenerife. Even though it's really hot here in Canary Islands, I am a big fan of woolly wool, really warm garments, mostly sweaters and cardigans. In this knitting episode, I'm about to share with you my recently finished objects, my works in progress, and some of the acquisitions and plans for the future. With that being said, I'm going to begin with my first finished object that I'm so excited about. Is the pattern that is named for the Love of Brioche Jacket by Sara, Louise, and she has one more part of her surname that I'm unable to pronounce. And this is what it is. This is an all-over brioche jacket, and she did this work quite well. It definitely correlates to the name for the Love of Brioche Jacket. It is a brioche stitch on 3.5mm needles, and as you can see, my yarn choice is pretty complicated. I'm going to speak about the yarn a bit later. The pattern is the contiguous shoulder construction, so you start at the back and then you increase for the front and for the back, creating this beautiful shoulder line. I was so much in love with this construction, and I am still, and I was looking for this pattern so much online and I could not find anything. One of the options was the Knit cardigan by PetiteKnit, but I didn't really like so much of a drop shoulder construction. I mean, I do like it, but it was too much, and I felt it's quite too boxy and too oversized for such gentle pattern as for me. Even though still I love a Knit cardigan and maybe I'll need it in the future, but for those times, for 6 months ago when I started this project, I really wanted a contiguous shoulder construction. As you can see on the back, it's a beautiful line that goes straight down, and this is what I was looking for. It took me 6 months. Of course, I was going back and forth with this project. It took me lots of patience, and I was losing some motivation sometimes because I was not really sure how the end result will be because of my yarn choice. I'll speak about it again a bit later. And brioche usually tends to stretch a lot, plus the yarn is very unstable, so I was like, I don't know what it's going to be like in the end. I struggled to finish it. However, I did, and I'm so happy with it. The pattern experience for some people was complicated because as you knit, you have to increase for the front, shoulder, front, armhole, and the body at different rates. So you have a chart. Thankfully, she attached the chart, like a spreadsheet for every single row that you need. Where do you have to make the increase for your size, which was super helpful. I did have to count the rows, and if you need this as well, you should be aware on which row are you all the time. So a lot of people complain on, a few people complained on Ravelry that they wouldn't recommend that pattern because of irregular increases and you get confused and all of that stuff. But for me, the pattern is just very amazing and beautiful if you pay attention. So I did pay attention, and I did read through the whole pattern as she suggested, and I didn't have any problems with that. It ended up beautiful. In the original pattern, you have different bottom bands. I do have a double knitted bottom band that it knits separately completely. So basically I need the whole cardigan without any bottom band, and then I knit flat the entire thing, and then I was sewing it up with a crochet hook. That was kind of a hustle, but I think it was worth it, and I'm really pleased with the result. I'm really looking forward to knit the second sample with the ribbon that she has on her pattern, but without the pockets still, because I don't really like pockets so much. About the yarn. The yarn is Lana Grossa's Seta Suri Big. It is Suri alpaca. It is very soft. It is way more soft than mohair for my personal preferences. Each ball has 25 grams and 100 meters, and that has 70% alpaca, 20% silk, and 10% virgin wool. In my experience, as I'm very sensitive to wool, I don't feel any itchiness at all, and I just feel like it's kissing my skin. It is so soft. It does shed a little bit as you're knitting it, and even after blocking, as I hold it on my black pants right now, it does shed, but not crazy. Not like when I had to drop kid silk mohair, it was just everywhere and on the floor. But I think most fluffy yarns like that shed, it's normal. So I was prepared for that. So I started the swatch with this yarn just for fun. I was like, let's see how this interesting yarn is going to look in brioche stitch, because the color is very gentle and I felt like it could be really nice transparent fabric. And I'm like, probably I'm not going to knit any garment in that swatch. But when I did the swatch, I was really, really impressed by how beautiful it is. And then I risked to knit this entire garment, which I'm pretty happy of. After finishing the object, I did the elastic thread on the back in the armholes. It did help to hold the shape a little bit, but still, it is very stretchy cardigan and I was really afraid to block it. I didn't know what to expect. But well, I did, and interestingly, nothing happened to the sleeve length and nothing happened to the body length. I think it's because this yarn is quite likely to felt. It basically sticks to each other, which is a good and a bad thing at the same time. The good thing is because, as you can see, after blocking it did not change, even though it's a brioche silk and Suri alpaca. But the bad thing is that, especially on the back of your cardigan, as you're gonna sit and use it all the time, it might felt. I think it will felt. So I'm going to use it super carefully. I feel like this garment is super fragile and I'm going to only use it for dates and going out or some special events, not for everyday use. I'm going to move on with my next finished object. This is a self-drafted project, but not because I love designing or constructing things. I actually hate it, but because I could not find the proper fit and proper construction for what I had in my mind. And believe me, I tried hard. So this is a sweater. This is a sweater that has a contiguous shoulder construction, similar to the one that PetiteKnit has with her terrazzo sweater. So when you knit the neck, and then you increase again for the front and for the back, and then you stop, and then you start increasing for the sleeves. Basically the same construction that I just had in my cardigan. So I had this project in mind for a long time. I wanted a very basic sweater, and I started actually knitting a Lyon sweater chunky edition by PetiteKnit in this specific yarn, and it ended up too huge, too oversized, and I frogged it. And I was like, okay, I will have to construct it myself because I better not waste time on searching and then failing again. So that's a very basic sweater where I did a tubular elastic cast on, then I did 1x1 rip. Then I knitted this line, I'm not sure how you call it, like a neck band. You have to double the stitches in the amount, and then you do double knitting for like 5 rows, and then you decrease stitches again to the same amount that you had. And that creates kind of a stability and this beautiful polished look to the garment. And then I just did short rows, first for the shoulders and then for the neck. When I say the shoulders, I mean this little slope that we have between the neck and the shoulders. The problem with contiguous shoulder construction that sometimes after finishing the neck, designers immediately start increasing for the front and for the back. And when the garment is pretty fitted, it creates a problem of pulling the fabric here towards the sides and creates that little fold. I think you've seen that a lot on Instagram pictures. So in order to avoid that, you have to make a few short rows over here on the shoulders to raise the fabric a bit, and only then create short rows for the neck, the depth of the neck. And only then increase for the front and for the back. So you see, it's a lot of details that I had to figure out myself, and there was no pattern that could do that for me. In the end, I'm really happy with the result, and I'll speak about the yarn just in a second. Overall, I'd like to say that I'm willing to pay and put my time into designers who would make more professional fitting garments, and I feel like a lot of knitters also look for that nowadays. When you have the bust shaping, when you have correct shoulder shapings and all of these things. Yes, it might be not for beginners, but I would really appreciate that because I don't like constructing things. I had to unravel this sweater, like the yoke, multiple times. I had to do some bust shaping in the front. I had to do less fabric for the back than the front, and since I don't have much experience in constructing things, that was a whole nightmare for me. And in the end of the day, I'm not sure if I really enjoy that process. I felt like, yes, I did the nice garment that I'm proud of, but was that enjoyable knit? I think it was more like an anxious knit rather than enjoyable knit. So the yarn is Lana Grossa Alta Moda Cashmere. It has 78% extra fine merino wool that is kind of brushed and then made up in a chain. Then you have 12% cashmere and 10% polyamide. When I saw that content, I was like, wow, that is going to be so soft, and those 10% of polyamide should give it kind of a stability. And yes, it is really soft, but it peels like crazy. As you can see, all of this cashmere, these white balls, that 12% cashmere is just going off all the time. I already had to de-peel it once, and you can see here, it's impossible to peel it completely. I think it's kind of expensive for what it is, and I don't know. Well, first of all, it shrank a lot, which was predictable because I did knit a swatch and it did shrink. So I knitted sleeves way longer knowing that it's going to shrink. But overall, the yarn lost its squishiness after blocking, even though I did the most gentle block with alkaline. I cannot do anything about it. This is just the quality of such yarn. All of the people that knit with that said the same thing. But yeah, basically you can feel that I'm kind of disappointed. I now will not knit again with this yarn. I feel it's too expensive and the result looks a bit floppy. Not floppy. I don't know. It looks like it's been worn for many years and it's just been worn for 3 times. That really frustrates me. And it looked way better right after finishing knitting it, before blocking and before wearing. So maybe I'll knit similar sweater construction because I loved it, but in completely different yarn that is more stable. That was my second finished object, and right now I'm going to speak about my third finished object. This is what I'm wearing right now. This is a self-drafted top from Knitting for Olive Pure Silk. Again, I had to do it myself for the same reasons that I did for my green sweater, just because I could not find anything outside in Ravelry, and I wanted an English tailoring shoulder construction. I know that also pure silk is really unstable thread, and I didn't want to need any lace or anything else in this specific yarn. So I risked to design it myself again. For the future, I'm not going to do any pattern or anything for this garment or any other garment. This is just because I had to do it. And again, the same thing, I'm really happy with how it ended up, but I'm regretting that I risked again and spent so much time thinking, unraveling, counting, all that stuff. It didn't make me so much joy, but anxiety as I was knitting it. This is the English tailoring construction when you have to cast on the back, do the increases along the shoulder slope rapidly, and then you knit front of the right shoulder, front of the left shoulder, then you connect everything in the round, and I knitted flat in my case. It was a lot of hustle, a lot of struggle, but in the end it looks beautiful. I'm going to point out in the description box a few patterns that are similar to what I've knitted that you can modify and achieve similar look. I'm not going to speak about these patterns right now, just find the links in the description box. I think that would be much easier if you would just do that, if you would like to knit the same top. So about the yarn I can speak because it's very popular yarn, Knitting for Olive Pure Silk in the color Haze. I never knitted with silk before, ever, either barrette silk like this one or other silk that exists in the market, and I would say it's not a yarn for beginners. I consider myself an intermediate knitter, not a beginner, not an advanced knitter. And I struggled a lot with rowing out, and I had to unravel some parts a few times because they were rowing out too much. Now you can see a little bit here, not so much, but still you can see some rowings out. So I would say this yarn is for those people who are confident with knitting flat evenly, and because otherwise it might give a lot of stress. I still have one ball of yarn and a little bit of second left. So I might knit a Barbaro taupe by knitting for Olive in the future, not now. There's a lot of substitutions that could be used in summer, like cotton silk blends, like wool silk blends that give you a bit more stability and that are a bit less picky. I'm not sure if I'm going to use this yarn for any other garments in the future, except some lace that I might knit with my leftovers of yarn. So I'm done speaking about my finished objects, and I'm about to share with you my WIPs. My first WIP is the Poppy Tea but sweater by PetiteKnit. This is a Poppy Tea, which is a very popular pattern that we have out there, but I do a sweater. As you can see, one sleeve is already done, and I also do modifications with the ribbing. So in her pattern she has 1x1 ribbing, and I modified it to 2x1 ribbing, which is 2 knit 1 purl, and I did a regular bind off, but not when you knit your stitches and then slip them over another stitch, but you purl them, which gives me this very interesting finishing. I'm not sure yet if I'm going to leave this bind off. I want to see what happens to it after blocking, because after blocking the ribbing have to straight like that and it's going to be more polished, you could say. And if not, I will just rip this off and make a sew-in bind off for 2x1 rib, which doesn't look as nice as a sew-in bind off for 1x1 rib. So I'm a huge fan of such knitting construction. It's an English tailor and shoulder construction. You start at the back, you increase rapidly along the shoulder slope on both sides and the front and on the back of your project as you knit flat, and then you break the yarn. You start right shoulder, left shoulder, then you pick up stitches for the sleeves, you connect everything in the round, and then you knit it as a raglan, which is a beautiful project. As for me, it connects a lot of different details and it makes it pretty much simple. The only thing I regret modifying as well is the edge stitches. When I knitted first my Leon sweater chunky edition and then I ripped off, I did edge stitches as PetiteKnit suggests, which is knitting and purling on every side. And that was really chunky, but that was obviously a very chunky yarn, and that gave me a very thick kind of seam underneath. And this time I thought, okay, I'm going to slip the knit stitch and then purl the purl stitch at the back. And then it created a pretty floppy, not beautiful edging. When you pick up stitches, it doesn't look as knit as it looks on her sample, which is a pity. I did not want to rip it off and change everything just because of that, because it doesn't look too bad. I think if I don't tell anyone, nobody would ever know or tell. But that's a lesson learned for the future. So I'm knitting the smallest size, and I have only 10 balls of Cardiff Cashmere Classic. Speaking about the yarn, that's the yarn I'm using. And this is color Sapiens 545, which I think is enough for the smallest size. So this is 225 grams, and she suggests for a Poppy Tea 175 for a short sleeve version, so I hope it's enough. Anyways, I'm going to finish the second sleeve, then I'm going to do the collar, and only then I'm going to knit everything that I have until the end. As you can see, I could knit the body a little bit already. Overall, I'm trying this garment a lot all the time, and I must say I really enjoy it. I'm not sure if Cardiff Cashmere cost that money, like it was really expensive. There's a lot of yarns that feel similar, well, not so similar, like brushed merino wool could feel similar, carded merino wool, and honestly I'm not sure if one should spend all the time on Cardiff Cashmere whenever she recommends that. But as a knitter, I thought it was nice to have one sample in recommended yarn, and I really wanted to try cashmere from Cardiff for a long time. I have other cashmeres from Italian stock yarn, yarn on cone, which is Loro Piana, and Coriage. So I want to knit those as well and then compare Cardiff cashmere and Loro Piana coarse hair I have with me. So it will be really interesting because Loro Piana stock yarn is way cheaper obviously than Cardiff cashmere because it's a stock yarn. It was basically a discontinuing production of yarn that was not used to produce their clothing of brand of Loro Piana. And there's a lot of shops that you can buy Italian cashmere on cone. I know on Etsy there's a few. A lot of Eastern European countries sell, like Lithuania, Poland, even Germany. So that requires a lot more research, and you don't have much color selection because it's a stock yarn. You only have leftovers, but still you're getting a beautiful cashmere for a way lower price. So that is my poppy tea but sweater in progress, and for the next episode I hope to finish it already, block it, and show you the end result. So that was it from my WIPs. I have only this project on my needles right now. Well, there's a few in my stash as well waiting for me from the last year, but I don't want to pick them up now and I don't want to speak about them right now. I'm really excited finishing my poppy tea bud sweater. And even now in Tenerife that is really hot, the heat is really coming, I still get cold late at night sometimes, and it's always nice to have a little garment in my bag when we go to a restaurant or to a walk in the city, and when it becomes windy especially, I'm freezing, and it's really nice to just put it on. Also, I don't enjoy having many things on my needles. I love seeing the finished object, not as fast as possible, but like sooner than I would have 5 projects on my needles. So I wanted to share with you my acquisition and the plan, what I'm going to cast on pretty soon, which is again woolly wool, and that's weird because people are knitting summer garments. And I live in Canary Islands, which I should be knitting summer garments, but I don't. So I'm going to cast on an Esther jacket by PetiteKnit. And I bought a recommended yarn. She recommends in her pattern, which is Jensen by Isager and Highland wool by Isager as well. You're supposed to hold 1 thread of Jensen and 2 threads of Highland wool together, so basically 3 strands. I'm holding the color 2S for Jensen and sand for Highland wool. When I saw that pattern going out, I bought it immediately and I bought the yarn immediately, which is very weird for me because I usually don't do impulsive buy and I don't impulsively decide to knit something because I know my mind can change a lot and I only knit garments that are in my favorites for a few months and I'm confident about that garment. But with this one, I loved it so much and I still love it that I just did it immediately. And I wanted to try Jensen for a long time, but since I'm very sensitive to wool, I could not allow myself wearing a sweater next to my neck. I don't know, maybe it is going to be fine, but I'm afraid. Because this yarn is not cheap, and if I'm buying expensive yarn and I knit a lot and then I'm not able to wear it, it's just a pity. So the jacket is a perfect thing. I'm really liking this jacket in my wardrobe. It's kind of something between a feathers jacket and a cardigan. Since I don't want to put feathers jackets, like thin feather jackets in the evening, which is ridiculous, and I'm too cold in the cardigan, I was liking something middle point. I usually took a very thick fleece with me, but again, if I'm having a dress or we're going to the restaurant, I feel creepy to just wear a feathers jacket or a fleece, like very thick fleece on top of it. So this jacket is going to be a beautiful addition to my evening walks, and I'm looking forward to having it in my wardrobe. So with that being said, I hope you enjoyed my first ever knitting podcast. I'm not sure if I spoke well or not so well, because that's the only first time that I speak in front of the camera about knitting. Anyways, I'm looking forward to finishing my garments and creating a second episode. Wishing you beautiful days knitting, beautiful inspiration, either in knitting a summer garments or winter garments like me in summer. Overall, I'm hoping to see you soon, and goodbye.